Ulipayo mziwi, Wantastagak, Bamgisgak. Welcome everyone to Wantastagak today. Thank you for coming to join us for our observation of Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm going to start off by having Chief Roger Longtoshian open this gathering with a welcoming song and a calling in song. And then we'll go from there. We'll get to the more formalities. But actually, this is the formality. We need to start off in a good way. So, Chief.
This is a calling in song. It's for calling the people to a gathering. It's also for calling in the grandmothers, grandfathers, the spirits that want to be with us. And to call in Doc, the creator, the one who made everything. Ego, Igonde, Ego, Ego, Igonde, Ego, Ego, Igonde, Ego, Ego, Kondo Dajane. Ego, Igonde, Ego, Ego, Igonde, Ego, Ego, Quando Dajane, Ego, Igonde, Ego, Ego, Igonde, Oh, next song is a greeting song. And there's a lot of greeting songs among the different Wabanaki peoples and tribes. In the past, probably every chief knew at least one greeting song, or may have had several greeting songs. And this was for greeting people to come into socials and gatherings, things like this. And so, or when we had pipe ceremonies, where each leader would get up and would dance their pipe up to the leader of the home tribe that they were coming to. So we have a ceremony for that too, where the chiefs dance their pipes to the home chiefs. So if we had chiefs coming from other Wabanaki people and we were having a real serious ceremony, each of the different chiefs from the different other communities that can come, the home chief would dance his pipe up to everybody and sit back down, and then each of the chiefs and their positive delegations would come with them and dance their pipes up. There would be a different greeting song. Hopefully. Today we don't have as many as we used to have, but hopefully with people like Rich, who's bringing back the language, we'll be making, which is already happening, making more of our own songs. And, keeping the songs going, making new ones. Yo Wanda de Wano Dane, Yo Wanda de Wano Dane, I don't wanna hey yo yo hey, I don't wanna hey yo yo hey, I don't wanna hey yo yo hey, I don't wanna hey yo yo hey. Hey Wanda de one hold on it. Hey Wanda de one hold on it. I don't wanna hey yo yo hey, I don't wanna hey yo yo hey, I don't wanna hey yo yo hey, I
stuck behind a couple of tankers coming across 9.
Carry on.
Yep.
Undala, not 10. So today is Indigenous Peoples Day here at Wontostegok, here in the state of Vermont. It's the real deal now. Took a few years to get here, but this is the second annual Indigenous Peoples Day as far as the holiday goes in what is now the state of Vermont. State of Vermont is a part of the Abenaki homeland, Ndakina, our land, Vermont, New Hampshire, southwestern Maine, southern Quebec, northwestern Massachusetts. It's a big homeland, and you are welcome, Ulipayo. It took a while to get to this point. Not everyone observes it in this manner today. There was a proclamation put out of the White House 3 days ago, staunchly defending Columbus Day, and it does not mention Indigenous people once on the entire page. I'd like to think we can do better. So here we are moving forward. All we have is the present, Nikwombi, right now. What has happened in the past has led us to this point and has created where we are, and what happens today will help to determine the future. And so thank you for coming. You're all a part of that decision-making process. Indigenous Peoples Day reflects the fact that there are a lot of people who have been left out of the story we've been told, the conventional narrative. It's not what most of us were taught. I did not grow up knowing the fuller story. We're recovering that story now. The retreat farm is offering themselves as a partner. We are grateful for that acknowledgement and commitment on their part to help carry this forward with the Indigenous community here in Ndakina and those others that have joined us from elsewhere. People move around a lot nowadays. We have with us today here several members of the Elnu Abenaki community. This is the state-recognized group that is closest to us here at Wontostegok in southern Vermont. There are 3 others. Missisquoi to the north on Lake Champlain near Swanton and Highgate, traditional community. The Nulhegan Abenaki people in the Northeast Kingdom. And the Coassac. There are several groups of Coassac, some of whom are recognized by state law and others who are not, but other people made those laws, so it's complicated. Elnu Abenaki is going to be joining with Retreat Farm, launching a new program. As I mentioned, they have offered themselves as an institutional partner. They are also working with other people in the community who I will let them announce themselves when that time comes. We welcome this opportunity to learn respect of each other, for the land. The Retreat Farm's mission of connecting people with place aligns very well with ours of reconnecting people in place. Indigenous people are defined in the dictionary, if you want to go there, as the original people of a place. So this is a duality. Without each other, it doesn't work. You need people and you need a place. Every place has people. Every person needs a place. And when we can enter into a relationship where we understand that we are that place and it is our responsibility to care for that place, things can move in a better direction than they have been. The process of colonization, which has changed that original equation, has brought a great deal of destruction and separation. To my mind, that's what Columbus Day recognizes. I choose to recognize a different way of being, and that centers on an indigenous way of being in relationship with the land. So here we are, to talk about that. This is a good thing. When you don't know better, you can't do better, but now we know better, so we can. I don't want to get into all these details right now, but I'm going to start off by saying I'd like to welcome Buzz Schmidt, Executive Director at the Retreat Farm, to sort of acknowledge their half of this endeavor moving forward. We have a name for this project. I think it's a good name. You'll be hearing it more going forward. The word and the name is Atowi, A-T-O-W-I, Atowi. You have to learn how to speak Abenaki to say it properly. The accent's on the first syllable, Atowi. It means together in space and time. I think it's a beautiful word. We don't really have quite such a word in English. It's important in the Abenaki culture and in the language, which is a reflection of the culture, to describe what is happening in the moment. It is a language of verbs, a language of action. And so to say that we are together, that's great. We are all together. But we are together in space and time right now. Right now. This is what matters right now. So, thus, Atowi. We're going to see what that looks like going forward with the Retreat Farm as a partner. And Buzz, come say a couple words about that.
Thank you, Rich. Let me try it. Atowi. No?
Atowi.
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 Atowi. Thank you very much, and welcome everyone this afternoon. Chief Roger Longtoe, JT, Melody, Linda, and Snapper.
The guy who's late.
The guy who's late. Distinguished guests, we're really honored that you've chosen to commemorate Indigenous Peoples Day again this year at Retreat Farm. We are really honored by this occasion. We're also really honored to be in partnership with Rich and the leaders of the local Abenaki community as they reestablish a strong Indigenous presence in southern Vermont, and as they work to explain a 10,000-year human history, culture, and environment with interpretive signage and other cultural resources on these lands, but in particular on the waters and lands across Highway 30, an area that, as well as this, that we have come to call Wantastaguk. This collaboration with Rich and the Abenaki elders, we feel falls right into the Retreat Farm wheelhouse. Very consistent with our mission. Retreat Farm, as many of you know, seeks to foster a just, healthy, and sustainable community here in southern Vermont. We pursue this work through a number of programs and initiatives, each of which is intended to connect people to the land and to one another. We believe that the proper connection of humans and the land is the foundation of our health, of our sustenance, and of our inspiration. We are but today's steward of these lands, not the owners. They're the ancestral homelands of the Abenaki. We believe that respect for these lands and a recognition that we're all in this together is essential for human progress, for justice, and indeed for our very existence on this planet. We're so privileged to be in partnership, and we're so happy to see you all here. And next year, when we're not restricted by pandemics and the like, we hope to see these numbers swell in attendance. So thank you all for being here today.
All right, a little bit more. We're going to open this up in a little bit for people to ask questions if there's things that you would like to know more about, and there probably are, because a lot of this is new to many people. I wanted to just address this idea of Indigenous Peoples Day a little bit more. Some people would say, why? Why Indigenous Peoples Day? Why single this out? Why not Columbus Day? I've begun to think about, and you can get into arguments. You can argue about this, till the cows come home, when they had cows. We still have Carlos. Okay. And arguments usually go nowhere fast, and things get politicized and divisive, and look around you. It's the world we live in right now. I would offer this. I see Indigenous Peoples Day and the reason for observing it as comparable to Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. There's two things that and I'm a little political here because it is political. We're talking about a holiday, we're talking about structure, government, all these kind of things. It is political. It plays out in how people treat each other and who makes the rules, who writes the stories. There are two things that this country cannot deal with well. That is, its indigenous people. Where did all this land come from? And slavery. Stolen land, stolen bodies, stolen lives. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday represents those stolen lives and the struggle for justice. Indigenous people represents those stolen lands. And it's not about Columbus, and it's not about some mythical, stereotypical native person. It's about this country coming to grips with what brought us to this point and what do we do now. So I'd like you to sort of dwell on that. Think of it that way. It's not putting Columbus down. Columbus was a human being doing human being things. People do things. Not all of them are nice. I don't think that person is worth honoring in the way that it's been done up till this point. The effect of what that person represents is worth honoring, being in relationship with the land. And there's a lot to be gained from learning about that. So we are here to join with you in that learning process, sharing what we know. You can share what you know. This Atui project going forward is going to be an exercise in doing exactly that. Very hands-on, face-to-face exchanges with each other in dialogue to look for a better way to be going forward. The state of Vermont has not dealt well with its own indigenous people. I mean, I think charity begins at home, so we need to start with ourselves and within our own communities and work out from there. It's the only way change can happen. Change is not bad. Change is constant. Creation is constant. It's all there is. It's change all the time. And we can be afraid of it, or we can learn about it and work with it. The state of Vermont hasn't dealt well with its own Indigenous people. It only in 2010 finally passed a law which basically says, okay, you've always been here. 2010. This is Vermont. This is a state that considers itself one of the most progressive in the Union. 2010, 10 years ago, folks. That began a recognition process which resulted in the 4 recognized groups I mentioned earlier, one of which, El Nu, is here in front of you in part. That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. Most people still have no idea what any of this is about, and it's a good story. It's a lot of good stories. So we're going to be sharing those going forward. I'm going to stop talking right now. I did a guided hike earlier this morning, and my voice is like about shot because my hour-long hike took an hour and a half. I talk a lot and I move slowly. But you should join one sometimes. It's kind of fun. Go out there and talk to our relatives. Oh, Melody would like to say something. Melody is somebody I admire greatly. She's wicked smart. and all of my pontifications, this one has been doing this for a long, long time, so just have at it.
I'm sick today from work, so I'm glad I made it. So thank you for having us here, Oleoni, and I just wanted to say that we've been doing this for a long time. Even during Columbus Day, we still did Indigenous Peoples Day, and during my master's degree, one of the things that I always loved about this time period in particular, when you're talking about first contacts, is that you have first contacts all the time. So what's the value in learning about history? And for us, time is cyclical, so history is prophecy. So if you think about Columbus, if you think about all the first explorers coming down, the first explorers for different European nations and meeting different Indigenous people, what do you want to know about that story? And for me, what I want to know is how to do better. And when there is any given number of things that you can choose to do with other people, choose the good one. Choose to love, choose to barter, choose to have a good relationship with each other, and choose to welcome one another, just kind of like we're doing today. So I hope you all know you're welcome here, and as we look out on this land, all of our ancestors are here, and I hope you feel them too. So thank you very much for having us here, and any questions that you have, apparently we're here to answer them, but I'm just here as a visitor. And I brought her, so you're welcome.
We don't have a big, long, formal presentation. Being here with you guys today is just kind of like how you do this, to be in community together. It doesn't need to be formal. We're here to recognize each other, to talk with each other. We'd like to open it up if you have any questions or comments. This guy can answer a lot of questions, and the rest of us can chime in. Do you want to do it one more time? We've been told we need.
So now we keep the dirty jokes down. The place that we're sitting here, it's an ancient site. It's an ancient Abenaki site. Like Rich alluded to, there's been people here for 10, 12,000 years, our ancestors. They're buried out there, not very far. All around what's now the water out there in the meadows, there were burials. And around the side of the retreat itself. There are probably burials out there, some that we know about, others that people have probably dug up and never mentioned. There are pictographs cut into the rocks, and the reason for that is because there was a whirlpool off of where those pictographs are. And anybody who knows the old traditions knows that wherever there's a whirlpool, there's a place into the underground spirit world. It's a place where the underwater spirits spin their tails and make whirlpools. And again, we have a second place like this further north at Bellows Falls. Again, giant falls, whirlpools, pictographs, burials on the western side of the Connecticut River. We know that there were fields of corn here at one time when the first settlers came in here. And probably up on that hill back in here, close to the ski jump, there was probably a village site up in there. Can't be 100% with everything. We have written accounts of things going on until somebody digs a hole and they find all sorts of things in the ground that people start really believing that these things are there. First, when they put in the first bridge over where Route 5 is now, when they were on the southern shore, the first hole that they dug to put a footing in, that's one of the first burials that they found back in 1796. We know that the whirlpool existed because of a written account of it from 100 years ago, but also when one of those trestle bridges broke, there's a photograph of it from over 100 years ago, and it was further back away from the bridge, and when you blow up that picture, you can see a circle in the water where the whirlpool is, and that's one of the only picture evidences that we have of it. But we also know, again, because Rich doing some serious research and things like that, there's also a fault line that comes right down through that spot between the mountains of New Hampshire and the mountains of Vermont. Okay, and it normally follows pretty much close to the river, and if you look on the geological maps, it comes inland right into that part, a couple hundred yards away from the mouth of the Connecticut, right through that spot. I don't know, the ancestors knew something because they were marking the spot. They were putting those pictographs there. And the pictographs are two wavy animals that look like snakes or eels, probably representing snakes. Yeah. And in the middle is a four-legged animal, and then above that are thunderbirds. And this represents the world view of, you have the underwater, the underground world. You have the world that we live in, which is the world of, well, two-legged and four-legged and a lot of other creatures. And then the thunder beings live in the sky world. Thunder beings are represented as giant eagles. And even to this day, hold up your feather there. This is why we still use eagle wings and eagle feathers for ceremonies and when we smudge and things, because the eagle is believed to be the bird that flies the highest in the sky and is the closest to the spirit world and to the Creator. And so when we send out our prayers and speak, the eagle carries those things, those words, with our tobacco that we burn to the spirits, so that they can hear us when we speak to them. So even to this day, the eagle and the thunder beings are still important. Not all of us, but many of definitely the men, but even some of the women sometimes, we still have those traditional tattoos and things of the thunder beings. And we also have them of the underwater beings tattooed onto our bodies. So this way, when I say to people, I says, how often do you walk along a road or a walkway and you step on an ant or a worm and you don't even realize you've done that, right? Well, the underwater spirits and the thunder beings that live in the sky, they bring the winds and the snow and the rain and so forth and the lightning. The underwater beings, they're the ones that can cause tidal waves and water spouts and earthquakes. So these two different opposing forces, we live kind of in the middle of it. And so by wearing these designs, these drawings on our bodies, putting them onto our things, putting them in the stone to mark places, important places, it's protection, protect us from letting them know that we're here and that we recognize them. So I think that's why those things are there to this day, and we kind of understand why they're there. You know, some people believe in spirits, some don't. We can pretty much tell you there's spirits still here. We go out and we do some ceremonies every now and then where we feed them and give them things that they would know and understand when they were alive, to let them know that we still understand that they may be here and that we try to pay our respect to them. We sing to them. We try to speak to them in the best Abenaki that we can speak, because most of the Abenaki people don't speak their own language fluently. There are thousands of us that know a little bit of it, but we got people like Rich who's actually relearning it. I mean, we were down to maybe 6 fluent speakers 15 years ago, 20 years ago. The number is coming up again. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, we had about, I think about 50 speakers at one point. Yeah, so, yeah, they were passing away. And actually, one of those people who is a major important player in the revitalization of the Abenaki language, he just passed away today. Rich just told me that. So he's going to be truly and sorely missed. But we have little Red Riding Hood over here, Molly, who's, you know, she's the next generations. And one of our biggest problems that we have today is actually getting our younger people to actually be part of what we do and to keep it going and stuff like that. So, I don't know. Jim, you want to say something? You good then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to, I'm learning the language. I think I'm out of kindergarten now. I might maybe first and second grade. I don't know. I think it's possible. It's challenging, especially at my age. I do want to acknowledge that one of our elders, language keepers, did pass away this morning, Joseph Elie Joubert. We very much appreciate his gifts to us, and we will miss him. He's still with us in the things that he taught us. Chief Roger was talking about the carvings over here and what's on them, and the 3 different worlds which intersect here at the surface. And the great thing about learning the language is the knowledge that's hidden inside of it. And so there is a word that acknowledges that in Abenaki. Up north, the native folks up there call each other Skeech, right? You've heard that before. And we have a form of that in Abenaki as well. Uskit kamik winowak. It's a big word, right? But Skeech is in there. Uskit kamik winowak. It means surface dweller. That's what we are. That's what we call ourselves. We live in this intersection between the sky world and the underworld right here on the surface. And so it's our responsibility to look for and observe that balance that Chief was talking about. You want to be aware that this is going on and this is going on, and here we are in the middle feeling all of it and dealing with it. So as Melody said, make some good decisions. When you run into a situation, what do I do now? Relating with each other, one-on-one groups, make the decision, make the better decision. That's your choice. That's your free will. And here we are in the middle, Wuskika-Mikwinawak, the Earthlings. I think that's kind of cool.
I think we're going to open up to questions.
All right, questions.
Unless you want a song.
Do you want a song? One more song, and then questions.
That song. You guys will. Migakawi, Spigwelong, Holy ugly wigum squat, holy ugly wigum squat, way hi, holy ugly wigum squat, holy ugly wigum squat, Migakawi, Spigwelong, holy ugly wigum squat, holy ugly wigum squat, way hi, holy ugly wiggle swap, holy ugly wiggle swap. Bigakawi, Bigwello, holy ugly wiggle swap, holy ugly wiggle swap.
You can guess what that song's about.
That's actually a modern song. Which was maybe 15, 20 years ago? Yeah. And it's about a Wigwigum squaw is a female wild duck. In this case, it was a female mallard duck that was taunting some of the warriors by coming up into their camp, probably looking for some breadcrumbs or something like that. And somebody wanted to eat her for dinner. So one guy threw his tomahawk at her, and the tomahawk never hit her, hit the rock, bounced into the water. That fella had to go in, and about this time of the year, he had to strip down and go get his tomahawk in about 8 feet of water. And the duck kind of ran back into the water and quacked at him. And then they moved from that island to another island, and the weather got nasty, so they were locked on the island. And it's a small island with nothing to do. Sit around and talk to each other, smoke your pipe and hang out and kind of wait for the waves to quit and the wind. And of course that duck, or at least we think it was that duck, showed up at that island. It was a long ways away, so if it was the same duck, she followed us about 10 miles. And she come up again and up on there, and somebody figured they'd throw rocks at her. And she would dart back into the water, never got her with a rock. And then that duck kept swimming around, and one of the fellers got out there on a hemlock tree that stuck out over the water, and he waited with a paddle. And the duck come floating by, and he smacked her. Well, he thought he had dinner. No, that duck just went down with the paddle. She come back up, and she gave him the wing and quacked at him. And so that got all the warriors kind of like really frustrated. So they all ran around trying to figure out how to get this duck. And eventually somebody said, "Hey, who's got a hook and fish line?" And so somebody said, "I do." And somebody said, "Hey, I've got some old bread in my bottom of my bag." He pulled out a piece of bread, and sure enough they got the duck. But needless to say, the duck didn't give up easily, quacked a lot, but she eventually lost. And so we immediately took the duck and we skinned her, and the guys took the feathers, the little blue feathers, and they were sticking them in their ears and in their nose so they could remember her. And then we cooked her up and we made 2 pots of stew. And we ran around gathering up different roots and wild onions that we could find and whatever we had in our bags. And so one of our elder guys that was there, they buried what was left of the skin and things. And everybody had feathers all over the place in their hair and in their nose and some in their ears. Some of the guys have their noses pierced. And we had the stew, and we had the stew that night in the 2 pots of stew. And one of the older guys, when he got home, he was kind of, he was happy to have duck and eat it and have a nice hot stew and things like that. But he also thought it was a good thing to remember that duck and to make a song up. And so he put the words together in Abenaki, and his brother, who was into doing plays and things like that, he was at that point, he gave him the words. He said, put it to some music that we can drum to. And so Ronnie took it, and at the time he was doing Fiddler on the Roof. And that's why there sounds like there's a little bit of a kind of a Russian Jewish thing in there. So yeah, we're not opposed to borrowing a little culture from here and there and throwing it into our songs and things like that. But yeah, that's a new song, and we have a story with it of something that happened in my lifetime. And it'll get passed down. It already has gotten passed down to the kids. And there are other songs and things like that and stories. And so for us, that's important. And like I was saying before, with one of the things is keeping the younger people interested and bringing their kids back to this. That's the hard part for us. And being community, keeping the community together and stuff. Not that we don't see each other and stuff, but the modern world, the outside world, is a very elusive and hard thing to keep from creeping into our native culture. And it's been doing that since the first time that the first Europeans came here. Because as soon as we figured out, hey man, that knife cuts a lot better than that stone knife, or that metal axe cuts better than a stone axe, and so forth. It's been going on. So that's how you lose culture. And it doesn't take very long to lose your culture. It was one maybe 2 generations, and you can completely lose your culture. And that's our big fight right now, is making sure that our culture comes back. It's taught to our own people, but also as much as we can teach other people outside of our culture about us, because I call it the great Puritan lie. One of the things that the Puritans and the New England English culture had done is to basically kind of wipe us out on paper. And that's like the sign that's across the street down there. That's an important step for us to being brought back. So we were kind of written out of history. And it's very, up until very recently, I still get people who come up to me and be like, there were no Indians here. There were no Abenakis. There were no natives here. You guys just used to come here and hunt, and they were like, you were roving bands of people. And it's like, no, we were here. There were villages all up and down the rivers. There was a village, like I said, here. It's just that the person who, and we have to even be careful of that today, right now, the person who gets control and is able to write things down ends up having the power over people. And we've seen that happen for a very, very long time. And we could have it happen again right now. So there's, I prefer the real history of things, but there's always a lot of made up history. And again, as Rich was saying, there's always a lot of politics attached to things and why they come to be. And even to Native people today, I tell them, be careful, because there are people right now who are rewriting the history. And even many of those people are Native people. And the problem is don't rewrite your history for political purposes. Rewrite your history, if you want to do it, to straighten out the history, to make sure that the history is not the history of the past that's caused problems, and don't make new problems in the future. That's confusing, but it's stick to the truth and not to the politics. So
That's all I got to say.
Anybody have any questions? Yes. Yeah, you can come over.
well, hey, we'll have the question seat over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Ricky Rosati, and I was elected a District 2 representative for a 3-year term, and I'm 27 years old, and I have lived here for 2 years, and for the last year I've started on the journey of trying to learn some of the deep history of the area, because I'm from upstate New York, and I have so many questions. I could probably limit down into 3, which are: do you have any feelings or thoughts about having or supporting a public referendum where people would vote on decolonizing the name Brattleboro back to Wantescott, and being part of a movement to have a new municipal logo that represents a more accurate history than the current one being used, which is an outline of the municipal building saying the year the area was chartered? And what would you think about having a Sokoke flag hanging outside and inside the municipal building as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as changing the name of Brattleboro and, changing the seal and all that stuff, I don't really care. Okay? From my point of view, that's up to you guys. That's up to the people of the town to do. And things don't always happen quickly. Things take time. People have to change their minds about things. As people open their minds and their eyes up to things, they make the decision to change things. I don't think forcing anybody to do it or to push it too hard. It will come when it's time, and that's we've talked about this many times before. Things happen when they're supposed to happen. Human beings like to make things happen when they want it to happen. Okay, and that's one of the problems that we have as human beings. Sometimes things are not meant to happen when we always want to happen. I've had many times when I want to go do something and I really want to go do it, and I get outside and the tire's flat. But no, I ignore that and I get that tire filled back up, and then something else happens, and then something else happens, and then something else happens, and I keep pushing it. And what ends up happening is something really bad happens. Something that if I had paid attention, I wouldn't have pushed it to that point. It's not to say that doing things and pushing things, but you can push things so hard that you end up putting yourself into a deeper frying pan than you started out with. And sometimes we have a habit of doing that as humans. And again, everything's a much bigger picture than most of us want to acknowledge. There's more stuff going on. We all have our little day-to-day things that we think are all important, but in the scheme, like he said, time and place, there are much bigger things that go on that we don't want to really even notice sometimes, that we really need to. It'll happen. It's just like this whole thing of Indigenous Day. Yeah, people had to work to do it, and some people had to push it, but there's ways of pushing things. There's ways of going about and asking people and talking with people, and then there's ways of getting out there and doing stuff that make other people mad. I mean, I know that there's probably a lot of Italian folks who are really peeved about this day being changed. And you know what really pisses me off? Is we got offered somebody else's holiday. instead of it being our own holiday. In other words, there should have been an Indigenous Day that was never meant to compete with Columbus Day. Okay? But there are people who have pushed that because they want to make a point with that. I understand that we got what we get. It's good to a point, but division is not the thing that we need to do right now. And that's what all these things that are going on around us is to cause division.
Just wanted to tag in. So in terms of the name changing, it never actually did. So when you think about the land itself, and when I refer to things like Patabagoc, which you all know maybe as Lake Champlain, the land still knows who we are, and we still provide a center to it. And this is still our homeland. So regardless of what the visitors call things, it is still that name for us. So our spirit is here. We are the land itself. And when you talk about changing names, they never did change. But when do you want to call them by the names they actually are? That's the question. So whatever you guys want to do, awesome. But in terms of providing more balance and everything to the world, we're trying to do that. And we're trying to do that with language, because language is the heart of culture. It holds your whole worldview. And so for us, people are trying to reclaim language, but the land still knows itself and we still know it. So the names, it's semantics, but for us, they're always there. Like we are the land. It's okay. But good luck. I hope whatever you guys decide to do, good luck. You have a fight.
Well, thank you. Better than good luck. I always say we have each other.
Yeah.
Good luck is good.
Luck is good.
Good to have it with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Over here.
Oh, yes. You want to use the mic?
You can take your mask off inside.
No, I'm not shy.
Hi, my name is Ami, and I just want to, it's not so much of a question as I just want to recognize when Chief Big Toe was saying that there were 15 people at one point left who spoke Abenaki. It just made me cry, because I want to recognize that trauma that lives inside of all of us for the loss that was taken from a culture, from people. And my heart is just right here with you. I just want you to know that. I think I speak for a lot of people.
Uliuni, thank you. Uliuni, Abenaki for thank you. Good returns. Uli, Uni, good returns to you. You share love, it comes back around. We mentioned our elder, Eli Joubert, who passed away this morning. He spoke exactly to that when he said that the secrets of our culture lie inside the language. And when you lose your language, you lose a great deal, and it can disappear quickly, but it's coming back. And Eli, with others, is firmly committed to the idea that everyone is better off when they learn that language, the language from this place. The language is open to everyone. You can learn it too. I invite you. You can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do this. Yes.
Could you speak a little bit to the efforts that you all are making to reclaim that language and teach the language to Wally, and just ways that people, like when I think of that, I wonder what are the ways that you're employing now, and yeah, sorry, that wasn't very clear.
It's clear enough. Can I say one thing? Yeah. One of my great hopes would be is it's kind of like what New Zealand has done, but it would be very hard here because we have so many nations and stuff. But in New Zealand, they actually teach Maori as a first language, or well, as a major language course in many of the schools and stuff. So that would be cool, very cool to see happen here. I'm not saying that, you know, people out in California or South Dakota got to learn Abenaki, but it would be really neat to see it being taught in the colleges here in the state of Vermont and New Hampshire and stuff. Again, that we're working towards that right now. We actually would have had a course this year. Is it still going? Yeah, we actually would have had a course where people would have gone with Jesse Bruchek, and it was, I think, a 2-week course.
They did the pilot.
Yeah, but they did it all over via.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they would have been actually in-person classes where you'd be learning from a person who speaks it fluently, whose kids speak it fluently. That's actually their first language in their household. But, you know, so that's, I'll let Rich talk because he's more, he's more in the language stuff. So, yeah, we're already working on that, but it'd be neat to see all the colleges offer that, and even high school. You know, so for kids that are Abenaki, it would be actually a class, a language class that they could learn. Because if you can get the kids to do it, they bring it back. The adults learn some of it, and then even, you know, younger brothers and sisters and stuff. But that's a big hope, we'll see.
The people in my household are learning the language whether they want to or not. The dog even knows a little bit now. It's kind of cool. More to the point, I would hope that in the very near future here at the retreat farm, as an element of the Atui project, we will offer some language lessons. So you can learn Abenaki right here. You can start. Why not? We want this to stay alive in the place from whence it came. The language is from the land and of the land, and it recognizes it, as Melody said. The Abenaki believe that our animal relatives named themselves, and we didn't name them, they named themselves, and if you speak their names to them, they will recognize it, and I've had that experience. It's kind of cool. I'll give you an example. It's a beautiful language. We have a red bird around here. It's pretty common. It has a little crest on the back of its head. It's a seed eater, very bright, flies. You all know the name of that bird, the cardinal, right? Why is it named a cardinal? You ever think about that? It's named after the Roman Catholic priest, whose vestments might suggest a cardinal. What does the bird have to do with the Roman Catholic priest? Very little. The name of the bird in Abenaki is Maquias. It means I am red going fast. I like that. So it's good to know. Yeah.
I don't want to, give you guys a false impression. I am the token white guy of El Nu, just so you all know that. They're generous enough to share their culture and everything, their history with me, their time, their attention, their language, and friendship. And friendship, more importantly. But what the thing about learning language, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is find somebody who knows some, even if it's just a little bit. Every time I get together with these guys, I will quiz them, and I walk away with a phrase. And I did not do well with languages in high school. You don't even want to know how I survived 4 years of Spanish. So I don't get languages very well, or very quickly, or very easily. But if I concentrate on one phrase, the last time we were at Fort 4, I talked to Rich about, he came back and he said, and I'm probably still not pronouncing it totally right, but he said, pomosa sponsui. And I was like, okay, what's that mean? He said, I went for a walk this morning. Well, every morning I take my dog out for a walk, I now say that phrase. And because of that and things like that, when I go out in the morning, I get to say, kwe kwe, hello to Mahon Guzul. Gizul, the sun, and I get to see Nana Buset, Grandmother Moon at night. And my dog, Alosana, let's go. There's all these little things that I have picked up, and if you go and just talk to people who know even a little bit of the language, you can learn something. You already know moose, so you're already one word ahead, all right? Moose is moose. But just go to somebody who knows even a little smattering, and I'm sure they'll be happy to share it with you. And that's how Rich says he's kind of made it to first grade. I am not even in pre-kindergarten. I mean, I'm still like crawling, but I'm learning little by little, and I'm getting words, and I can say thank you. I can say Ndakagui, which is the response to Uliuni, and Ndakagui, which would be kind of thank you, you're welcome. It happens slowly, but it can happen surely, and if it can happen to me, I know it can happen to you. So find somebody, because I'm sure they'd be happy to share things with you.
There's another Abenaki word. I say Abenaki, Abenaki. If you're from Vermont, you're an Abenaki.
He hangs out with them northern guys too.
Yeah, they talk funny. There's another word that you all know. It's an Americanism, a word that we use here in America. It has spread across the world now, but it's a way of saying yes. It's the way that the Abenaki people say yes, and you all say this every day. That's it. That's how you say yes. So you're on your way. You know a couple words. And moose. There you go. Moccasin. Yeah. Means foot wrapper. It works. Yeah.
What is the Abenaki creation story?
There's several.
The question is, what is the Abenaki creation story?
It depends on which Wabanaki you want. It depends.
It depends, yeah.
It depends on which Wabanaki nation. Each Wabanaki nation has their own variation of it. And to kind of put that in perspective, when I say Wabanaki nation, the Wabanaki people are, we're the Western Abenaki. Then you have the Eastern Abenaki, which are considered the Passamaquoddies, the Penobscots, the Maliseets, Micmacs, and so these people.
There we go. See, it wasn't too high; it was just too far away. Close.
Tightening it up. There we go. The Wabanaki nations are made up of us. The Western Abenaki, which is made up of the 4 tribes here. Next to us, and just over that side are the Pennacook Abenakis, the Kawasuks. Then you keep going. You got the Penobscots, Passamaquoddies, the Maliseet, or they prefer to be called by their actual name, which is the Wistqueak, which means the people of the beautiful river, which is what we know now as St. John's, but that is the Wolastoqiyik River. And then from there you have the Mi'kmaq people, which is Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. There's some Mi'kmaq that are on the Canadian border, much north, but I think they're more like transplants, in that aspect. So each one of them has their variation of a creation story, and some believe that, Guskabe, that, he shot an arrow into an ash tree, and the ash tree split in half, and out from that split walked man and woman. There's other creation stories that vary with the sky woman falling from the sky and landing on the back of Tolba the turtle, that's more Iroquoian, but there are some people that look at that. It's kind of a smattering, but.
So now, the question is, did you want to hear a story, or you just wanted to hear about the different stories?
Yes.
Okay, so here, we're gonna have to get closer. All right, so like Jim was saying, there are many different versions depending on which of your communities that you come from. This story is more from up around Missisquoi and up along the Lake Champlain area. In the beginning, there was nothing but darkness, and the Creator, Tabaldak, the one who made everything, Gitzi and Yoasko, which would be the Great Spirit, and it was black. There was nothing there, but in his thoughts, every time he could think of things, he thought really hard about these things. He didn't know that he had the power to create things. And as he was thinking about light. And in that moment, the stars come to be. And when he saw that, he realized that he had great power. And he started to think about other things. And as he thought about more of these things, we would call them today planets, the galaxy, the universe come to be. And at this point, there was only one sound in the universe, and that was Tabaldak's heart. And that's one of the reasons that we play the drum. Okay, the drum is in a circle. It's a sacred thing. We tend to respect the drum, but it represents the sound, the beat of the Creator's heart. And so, as he thought of more things, he started realizing again that these places that he made, there were things already there that he had put there without even knowing he did it. He had thought about life and so forth. And so he went around to the different places, what we would call planets, and he would visit them. And he came to this bright light, which we call Mahon Gizul, our grandfather the sun. And he noticed one of these round things in the universe called a planet. And that was Mundakana, the earth, us, Aki, which means the land, the world. And it was different from other ones because it was blue and green. And so he decided to investigate further and see what maybe he made there and put there. And when he come down to the earth, there was nothing but water everywhere. But there were things there alive already. And so he thought really hard about it, and he asked for one of the great things to come up out of this water. And that was a giant snapping turtle. It was a huge turtle. And the Creator said to the turtle, he says, you live here. And the turtle knew. He said, you're the Creator. You're the one who made us. And he said, okay. He says, you have all this mud and green things on your back, on your shell. And the turtle said, yes, that's the way down at the bottom of this water, the blue stuff here. This is this material we call mud today. And he said, the green things just grow on me. And so Tabaldak took that and he said to the turtle, he said, will you carry the world on you, the land that I'm going to make? And the turtle said, whatever you want to do. He says, you made me. He said, you created me for a reason. And so the Creator took that mud and he took the green material and he touched it and he blew onto it with his breath. He blew the breath of life into it. And in that process, his thoughts went into it too. And the land started to grow onto the turtle's back. And so the turtle is why we call this place Turtle Island. The turtle is still down there and it supports the world upon its back. And as the land spread, the green things spread too into trees and different plants. And once this had spread to a big enough area where Tabaldak could then step down into it, he came out of the universe and he stepped onto the earth. And at that time he made himself the size of what we are today. Because again, the Creator can be anything he wants to be. So, but that was the form he picked. And he walked around and he made new things. He made fish in the water. He made new trees. He made little bugs and insects, certain animals. But not all animals, because in later stories we find out where these other animals come from. And so when he got to a place that he liked, at that time the world was pretty much flat, okay, and it was dotted with lakes and rivers, things, water was flowing through them, but everything was again flat and moving very slow. And so Tubbledock looked around and he said, he says, I want to make beings in this shape that I've made myself and that might communicate with me and could think of me and know that, I created them. And so he looked around and he says, but it's got to be made from something from this world here, from what, from the land that I've created. And so he looked about and there were large boulders, and he walked up to two boulders and that were next to each other, and they were about half the size of a house each. And he sat down and he started carving with his nail into them and carving these beings, these people. And when he was done doing the carving, he took his breath and he blew into these people and they came to life. And they were the first people, the first humanoid type beings that had two legs and little arms, stubby arms made of stone. And they kind of came out of the, up and started moving around, and he watched them and he listened to them there. But the thing is because they were made of stone, they were cold on the inside. They had no heart. They had, they weren't thinking about things, and wherever they stepped, they crushed things because they were so heavy and so big. And he didn't like that too much because they didn't really care or pay attention to what they were stepping on. So the plants and the little animals that he had made, they would just go about their business, sit down wherever they wanted to, and crush these things and leave very large imprints where they would sit and step. And when he spoke with them, he said he didn't like the way that they spoke. Their language was crude and rough because it was made from stone. And so at some point, Tubbledock decided that he didn't want these people to be the ones who would walk upon the earth. And so he come up behind both of them and he took his fist in each hand. He grew big and he come up and he slammed his fist down on top of them, and they shattered into millions of pieces. And some of those pieces shattered and flew into the water, into the lake that was nearby. And they become the little people that go around now today, or forever when they first were created, and they go around in canoes made of stone, upside down. And when you look in the water, they are the reflections that you see of yourself. But that's why when you look at them for a while, sometimes you'll see yourself perfectly, but then it'll get weird and it'll go away and it'll move around and do strange things. That's because it's the little people in their stone canoes messing with your head. They like to play tricks on you. And it's like any of the water spirits. When you go into the large bodies of water, even small ones, you always should give some tobacco and say some prayers, because they can take you to many beautiful places, or they could kill you if they want to. So you need to pay respect to them. The stone pieces that shattered and went into the woods, and they ended up becoming the little people that run around out there. And even to this day, when we go out and we're in places, they like to live in the places where deep gullies with ferns, and waterfalls, and water normally coming through the area. But they can be anywhere on the land. And if you don't pay them respect, they're the ones that, when you're at the end of the day, when you're on a long hike or you're out hunting, and there was nothing under your foot a minute ago, but now you got a branch there and it trips you, or a rock or something, that's them messing with you because you haven't shown respect to them. So whenever we take the kids out, or even when we go out hunting, we always leave some tobacco, but those places where the waterfalls are in the deep ravines, we got the kids with us. A lot of times we don't have beads anymore, shell beads or glass beads, shiny things. I tell them, leave a little quarter, a shiny quarter or a dime or something on the rocks for them, and some tobacco. All right, so
Pennies are good.
yeah, pennies will work. Yeah, copper is that works better in the water, because that's the scales of the underwater spirits that are made out of copper and mica. So, so get back to the story here. So Tabaldak had shattered these two people, and he looked around and he's looked for something better, something that he thought would be a better material to make the first human beings from. And in the distance there was a grove of ash trees that he had created, and they were blowing back and forth in the wind and bending, which ash does. Ash has many uses. It's good for making bows and arrows. Black ash is used for making baskets and things like that and stuff. So he walked over to that area and he picked the two nicest ash trees that were there, and he started to carve them, and he carved the first man and first woman, and he took his hands, put them over each of their mouths and blew into them, and the life went into them and they become people. So they're the first Onlombak, the Abenaki people. And so he watched them and he spoke to them, and he watched how they moved, and he listened to their words, and he liked the way that they spoke. Their language, their voices were sweet. It wasn't hard like the rock people were. And he watched as they stepped around. They were very mindful where they tended to step, and tried to respect, things, and stay on the trails and not openly just go out and step on anything and kill it. And he liked that. And so he carved 6 more trees that were the first men, and 6 more trees that were the first women. So we had 7. 7 is still to this day a sacred number. On some of the tattoos that I have on my body that represent the first 7 women, first 7 men. Each of the double curbs represents those first 7 people, 14 people altogether. And so while he was doing this, he was teaching them, things and talking with them. He turned and he realized there was a bit of a commotion going on in the area where he had carved all these people, right? And there was like kind of a whirlwind going on, and the earth was moving about, and all the wood chips and the sawdust and stuff that he had carved these people from started to form this being. And this person pushed himself up out of the ground, and it was half a person sticking out of the ground, and it was male, and it was in the shape of a human. And Tabaldak looked at him and said, he says, I wasn't expecting you to show up. He says, where did you come from? And he says, I'm not sure. He says, I think you had something to do with it. And he says, I'm here now. And so it was because of all the strength. And when we talk about magic and power and strength, we call it medicine. The medicine that was put into all the work that Tabaldak did, he caused this person, but he didn't have to breathe life into him like he did with the other humans. And Tabaldak looked at him and he says, he says, I think you have a lot more power and medicine than the other beings here that I have created, these humans. And this person looked and said, I don't know what I can do. And so he called him Aziozo, the one who makes himself. And he gave him his name. And he said to him, he says, I could always use a helper. He says, I have many places to be in the universe that I've created. And he says, I could use somebody here that has spiritual power, medicine, to help the humans. And so Aziozo was very happy about that. And he's like, yeah. He says, I'd love to do this for you. He says, since you created me, and not really, but you did. You know, he's like going back and forth. It's kind of like all the things that Creator had made previously, just by thinking about these things without even realizing what he had done. And so Ozzy Ozo said, but he says, I want to explore first. He says, do I have some time to do this? And Tumbledock said, do what you need to do. So Ozzy Ozo started to push himself along the ground with his arms. And as he did, he thought about getting bigger. And he did. And he got bigger and bigger and bigger till he was a mountain, beyond a mountain. And Tumbledock and the people had to move back a ways as he started to grow. And at that point, he started pulling with his arms, and he took off, like almost like the wind, and he plowed through the earth. And as he moved through the earth, all that dirt and rock and everything, as he pushed through, moved forward ahead of him, but it also moved to the sides. And as he was grabbing, he was creating, as these big mounds ahead of him and on the sides, he was creating the Adirondacks and the Green Mountains. And he was leaving a deep hole in the ground where his torso was traveling through. And as he did that, the water pushed up with the earth and the ground, but eventually it started filling in behind him. And so by his hand marks of all the rivers and things that would later become rivers, as the water found the easiest way to flow through. And he kept going north. And some say he made it as far as the St. Lawrence. Well, he created the St. Lawrence, because when he got up far enough, up to what is Canada now, he decided to turn east. And he went east. And he went as far as the salt water, the ocean. And when he got there, he wanted a drink. And he drank some of that water. He didn't like it because it was too salty. And so he turned around and he went west. And he got to a place where the ground was so hard with rock and so forth that he actually had to pull himself up and out. And that was where Niagara was formed, the cliffs there. And he kept going, and they say he got lost up in the northwest, and he went around in circles over and over again. And then he would go, he'd make more circles, and he'd go more, and he created the Great Lakes. And then he followed his way back the same way he came. And all these things, all this water started filling in. And eventually, he came back down the way he came. And when he got back, he caused a great big wave to happen, and the people had to run. And Tumbledock, told him to make himself smaller so he wouldn't disturb so much things. And he did. And he made himself down to the size of a human torso. And the people at that point now, it'd been quite some time. Nobody knows how long it took him to do this trip. And Tumbledock had been waiting and talking to the people and telling them how to live and do things and making new things, new animals, new plants. And so the people were sitting there, and they were kind of snickering a little bit quietly off to the side. And Ozzy Ozo looked at him and he says, "What are you laughing at?" And Tumbledock looks at him and he says, "Don't get upset, Ozzy Ozo." He says, "You have no legs." He says, "You forgot to make yourself legs." And Ozzy Ozo looked down and he's like, "Huh." He says, "Boy, ain't I silly." So he thought about it, and he started pushing up, and he pushed himself out of the ground, and he pushed himself a set of legs. And so now Ozzy Ozo could walk just like everybody else. And Tumbledock said to him, he says, "You have now explored for a very long time. You've learned a lot of things." He says, "I'll talk with you more." And he says, "I've got to go and take care of other things in the universe." And he says, "But your job is going to be to teach the people how to be good, how to make fire, how to do all these things that I will explain to you in your dreams, and you will tell them how to do." And so Creator left, and that was what Ozzy Ozo did. He was here to protect the people and to help them in times of need. And at some point, Ozzy Ozo, it seems that around the time of when the first Europeans started coming here, he got tired, and he decided to turn himself into a rock out in Lake Champlain. And they call that, Thunder Rock? Rock Thunder. or Ozzy rock. And so that today is still a sacred place, and people go out and near boats and leave tobacco and little gifts out there. And the story is when we need him, he will come back. He'll turn himself back into a being again and help us out. Now, that is more of a Western Abenaki creation story of how we came to be and things to come to be. Ozzy in other stories, we call him, in other people's stories, and so is called also Gluskapi or Gluskap among the different Wabanaki people. So it depends on where you live. Some people say that Ozzy and Gluskap are just the same people. It's just that we're given different names. And in all these other Wabanaki stories of Gluskapi or Gluskap is doing the same thing. Is put here to teach the humans how to be good, how to hunt, how to make fire. He's also a protector. When the Creator made things, he also made things that were what we would consider bad spirits, bad beings, rock giants, things like that would hurt people. And even some of the animals were much larger when the Creator made them. Things like chipmunks and red squirrels were as big as bears. But Gluskapi or Ozzy later turned them into what they are today, so that they wouldn't hurt people and destroy things and stuff. So I'll hope. So that's one story. That's one story. You're welcome. Yeah. That helped eat up a little time.
I'm not going to talk that long. Thanks, Roger. I just had something quick to say. So I recently got back from Virginia. We had moved down for a couple years, and I had a lot of time to think. And so when I was walking with my dog, who gives me all my best ideas, we were walking down the road, and I was like, why do we have like 12 creation stories? It doesn't make any sense. Like, how can we have this one, which I haven't heard the whole thing, but now I have, and there's a lot of other stories that we have. And then I looked at the trees, because I forgot to ask them their creation stories, and I forgot to think about all the other things. And then I remembered that I was thinking from a Western perspective, and that there's one creation. So when you ask about creation, it's an ongoing process, and we always change over time, and that's why we're still here. That's why we're living, breathing cultures, right? So we have many creation stories because we have been remade many times. So we'll have a creation story for Gluskabi fighting back the ice monsters, talking about glaciers and the retreat of the glaciers. And we'll have stories about Corn Mother for about 2,000 years ago when corn finally came here, right? So how is it that you can have a story that's about 2,000 years old, but we've been here for 12? Because at that point, we were remade. And so I'm just waiting for us to maybe think about what our new creation story is, because we need one. And we need a really good one. And maybe, like what they were saying, we can all make it together, because at this point we're all here and we have many new neighbors. So I think it can be an inclusive one, but I also think we can look at the world around us. And, I was in Burlington the other day, and I was telling one of the creation stories about Gluskabi, who's sitting there in the bay, right, and looking at us. And I'm just thinking about all the wastewater in Burlington and now how my Creator's swimming in feces. So I told them to fix it because they need to. Because our spiritual health depends on it. This is the place where God exists for us. And please don't let my Creator swim in your filth. I'm done. I'm done with mincing words. Okay? So we need a new story, but maybe tell it a good one and clean up your crap.
Turns you off.
Anybody else? Questions? Comments? Offerings? Yes?
I was curious, where you would suggest for people to go if they wanted to learn more about this. What do we as a community have to offer with, expanding the knowledge of this? Where would you send somebody or suggest for them to go?
Push their state legislators.
Was that a planted question? I would suggest that you, if you want to know more about the Indigenous people, you should go ask the Indigenous people. Not a book. Books are helpful, but you should, if you have a question, you should ask the people who might have the answers. On that note, Elnu is here. The Atui project will be centered here at the retreat farm and at Wontostagok at the Meadows, and there will be a lot of opportunities for people to learn right here. So you don't have to go far. Yeah.
Books are a good place to start.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry.
obvious question. Yeah. So what about right now? Well, you're here, so thank you for that. There are a few books out there if you want to turn to books and get a foundational knowledge. I would suggest The Original Vermonters. Can I say that? By Hallowell and Powers. The Original Vermonters is a good book for an overview of the culture from an academic viewpoint. Another one is Colin Calloway's The Western Abenaki. As far as books written by people from within the culture, Fred Wiseman's what's Melody? What's Fred's Dawnland book? Voices of the Dawn.
And then Reclaiming Our Ancestors.
And Reclaiming Our Ancestors. Those are self-written, auto-written by Abenaki people. So those are good sources as far as books go. Online, there's a lot of resources available through the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association, educational curricula, things of that nature. And I would hope that through the Atui project, we start to make a lot more of these hands-on things available right here, so that there'll be a place where you can come and learn about that and see them for yourself and get connected with a real person, a voice.
Again, like Jim was saying earlier, you may not always find the same exact traditions or stories, even among the different Abenaki people or the different Wabanaki people, because there's a lot of stuff going on. There are people who are more so into the powwow world, and that's a world of its own. It's a very pan-native cultural type thing, and we have our own problems within our own native world. Is that no, you ain't doing it the right way. You got to do it this way. You got to turn your pipe so many times that way, and all this other stuff. And a lot of that just it's people being people, just doing the things that they do. I tend to, if I go someplace and I'm a guest, I try to fit what they do. I watch what they do and I try to, stay as close to it. There are certain things like Jim's been burning the sage here. Again, we didn't have sage here. We had a type of sage, but we didn't have white sage or tumbleweed sage. But we tended to burn white cedar and red cedar here. But now we use sage because it's come out from out west. A lot of things, the big drums, big powwow drums, things like that. A lot of that came east back in the 60s and 70s when you had Wounded Knee and a lot of the native actions going on out in Lakota country and stuff like that. And those things were brought back here, and then again in the powwow world, it's always the big drum. Generally, we tended to use small drums here and rattles. Some people use water drums here in the east, and not drums covered with hide. Well, it's still hide, but you have water inside them. It's a different sound. That tends to be more so the Haudenosaunee people, the Iroquois people in New York and stuff. Again, like I said, a lot of tribes, a lot of nations, and even depending on family traditions. It can change. Things can be a little bit different. But most of the tribes today around the country, tobacco is still a sacred plant. It's the plant that carries our prayers when we burn it or smoke it to the spirits and to the Creator, so they can hear what we have to say. The eagle tends to be, again, among most tribes, an important bird and an important spiritual being carrying our prayers and stuff. Like, we're a little different here than many tribes, especially in the east, but even out west. Most Abenakis don't get very upset when they see owls, and will actually wear and use owl feathers and things like that. In our tradition, the owl is not. It can tell you that something bad is going to happen, and if one crosses your path in a strange way, it might be a warning. It also could be an ancestor coming by, or somebody passing away recently, and the owl is letting you know that that's happened. And so to us, the owl is the one who takes us when we start to pass into the next world, takes us through the forest, the night forest, and through the spirits, through the spirit forest to the other side. And then we pass. Some traditions, some people say we follow the Milky Way. Others say that we go to the top of the highest mountain, our spirit, and then pass into the spirit world. So again, there's different traditions depending on who you're speaking to. But again, the burning, the smudging, things like that, and the tobacco seem to be a universal thing among almost all of the native people in North America, up into Canada. South America, it can be a completely different ballgame depending on where you live and stuff. So, and I don't know that much about I do know a lot of things, but I don't know everything about everybody and all the different tribes and nations that are out there. But like I said, when I go to somebody else's place, I try to follow what they do and don't get too upset. But some people do. And good answers.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep in mind that there is no one native culture. There are hundreds. That's true of this continent, and it's true of the planet. It's good to know the place where you live and the people of that place. Pretty simple. It doesn't need to get real complicated. It's about people and place, and it's about land. Where the separation and the disconnects come is when you separate people from land. And we need land to be alive. And so that's where chickens come home to roost, right there.
Anything else?
Anyone else, or should we wrap up here? Oh, yes. Right
Now
over
on
here.
sale.
If you didn't notice, there's the table full of amazing and wonderfully crafted traditional objects made by Linda. Linda's over there.
JT, me,
and JT and Chief Roger, and check them out. It's the real deal. Support your local folks. And these items similar to this will be available here at the Retreat Farm down the road once retail is back open again. It'd be another one of the aspects of the resources you can avail yourself here. Here's a sneak preview. Check it out. Oh, yes. And available now right up the road on Route 30. Next to Roger and Linda's home is Two Otters, which is a native gift shop where you can get all of these things any day of the week. Okay?
And more.
And more. But wait. Okay, we're going to have a traveling song and hit the road.
What we normally say to people that when they're leaving is Ulibam Kani, which originally was to travel by canoe, and it means, you know, travel well and be safe. So we use it today for cars and trucks.
Land canoes.
The land canoes. Well, so.
I am Linda Longtoshian. I have a store in Jamaica, Vermont, and 2 Otters Native American Arts. We're Elnu Abenaki, state recognized here in Vermont. A lot of the work you see here is done by my husband and I, and some of our elders here. And we make everything from scratch.